Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, wa aqibatu lil muttaqeen, wa la udwana illa ala al-zalimin, wa afdalu salati wa atammu taslim ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. So beloved brothers and sisters in Islam, I'm your brother Dawud, Executive Director of CAIR Michigan, and our staff attorney, Sister Amy, will be joining us very shortly. We will be having a Know Your Rights presentation today, and it will be specifically relating to accuracy around the ongoing conflict and the ongoing war against the Palestinian people. And you will be told about your legal rights and also given some suggestions. And I will say a couple of things from the onset, and then we'll say some concluding comments. So we know, number one, that as not just Muslims, as people of good conscience, looking at the ongoing humanitarian crisis and the war crimes that are taking place right now, the cutting off of water, the cutting off of electricity, the cutting off of food and medicines, which is a clear violation of international law that's taking place against the people of Gaza. Besides the many years of Gaza being an open air prison. And this bothers us tremendously. And what I would say is that in this regard to the specific issue, and you're going to be told about your rights, but, you know, we as a community, we've been under a lot of pressure and a lot of pushback since the tragedy of 9/11. And I would just encourage you all to put this in perspective. And for those of you who are inclined towards your advocacy and activism, or want to represent this righteous cause in the best way and means possible, to know that anytime there's a group of people that stand up for truth, there's going to be resistance. And with that, there becomes disparagement, there becomes smears. And unfortunately, even in some cases, this becomes threats to people's physical safety. This happened to all the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we have after Adam alayhi salam, that are mentioned in the Quran. They all were disparaged, they were all demeaned. From Nuh alayhi salam to Lut alayhi salam to Ibrahim alayhi salam. And even in the case of some prophets, they were tortured and lost their lives, like Nabiullah Yahya alayhi salam. And similarly, this happened to the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, some of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, like Sumayya, the first martyr amongst the Sahaba, and her husband Yasir, and of course Sayyid al-Shuhada Hussein ibn Ali, this happened to as well, and many others. So just to remind you that, you know, don't let it demoralize you that we have people who are smearing us and who are involved in Islamophobia, and as well as trying to dehumanize our brothers and sisters. This is sunnatullah. History repeats itself. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, allows enemies to the believers. He allows this out of his wisdom. And this is a test for us. And we have to have sabr in Allah's qadr. Meaning we have to persevere and have patience in regards to the divine decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what he allows to take place. And we ask Almighty Allah for his assistance. And this is more of just a spiritual reminder and spiritual advice. But now we're going to go actually to, I guess, less about morality and more about legality. Because I always say that in America, illegality does not equal morality, and also necessarily legality does not equal morality, right? These aren't exactly one and the same in all cases. But nonetheless, we have to operate within the legal framework of the Constitution of the United States of America and within the laws of the state of Michigan. And for that, I have my honorable colleague and very outstanding attorney, Sister Amy, who heads up our legal team at CAIR Michigan. She's our staff attorney here at CAIR Michigan, and she will be giving you some very valuable information. I'm going to take myself off of the screen, and then I will come back on the end. But in specific to this issue of our rights as it pertains to advocacy for Philistine. Sister Amy, I will let you take it from here.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. First of all, thanks for joining us today. I know it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's not an easy time to join, but this is such an important topic because we have had a lot of calls and complaints since last week from people who are posting on social media and are facing backlash. Students who have spoken up in class or shared posts or shared videos in class who've faced the repercussions of that. So we thought we'd come today to talk about like what are your rights and what can you do, especially as it pertains to public school. We have a lot of children who are very active in middle school, high school, and colleges and universities. So like what are their rights when they're standing up for Palestine? And we see the flooding of the media, and we see people who are standing up for Palestinian rights being attacked. So the least we can do is understand what our rights are when we're dealing with a government institution. So I like to say this at the beginning. Your rights are protected only against government interference. Your constitutional rights, as we know them, your right to free speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, all of that are rights that are protected from infringement by the government, both the state government, the federal government, and your local government. Public schools are inherently a body of the government. Whether you're talking about a K through 12 school or a college or a university, if you attend a public school that is funded with public funds or either state or federal funds, you are attending a public institution, and they are bound by the framework of the U.S. Constitution as it pertains to your rights. I know there's this ideology that students don't really experience the same First Amendment rights in the public school as they do on the street or in other technical public forums, but that's just not true. Students in public school, whether it's K through 12 school or whether it's colleges and universities, have the full rights of their First Amendment, so long as they're exercising their rights to free speech in a way that is not disruptive to the learning environment for the other students. So what does that look like? That looks like students having the absolute right to post what they feel, their political ideologies, and their opinions on social media. Schools cannot punish you for what you post on social media, whether you post it during your lunch hour or if you post it at home after school is over, before school starts. You cannot be punished for your political speech on Instagram or Snapchat or Facebook or whatever, Twitter, whatever other social media websites you might be using. The only caveat to that, or the only exception to that, is you cannot post a threat to your school or to other people or to members of your school on social media, because that is a crime, and threats that are real are never protected speech. It's one of the only areas of speech that's not protected. What is protected is your right to have a controversial opinion that your peers don't agree with your teachers might not agree with it, and the administrators might not agree with it. You are entitled to hold that opinion, and you are indeed entitled to express that opinion while you're in school. So if you are engaged in a conversation with your friends, or maybe there's a classroom discussion about what's going on in Gaza right now, you have the absolute right to give your opinion about that without fear of repercussion. You have the right to share information with your peers without repercussion. If you are in the lunchroom, or you have an MSA, or you have a Students for Justice for Palestine organization, and you guys are pushing information on your social media platform, even if it's the social media platform that's attached to your campus, you have the right to do that without having your speech censored, meaning the school cannot take your posts down because they don't like what you have to say. That's called viewpoint discrimination, and it is not permissible. A teacher cannot silence you in the classroom by labeling your speech disruptive because they don't agree with your opinion or because your opinion might be controversial. With that being said, what we want to do is we want to ensure that you have, express your opinion in a way that's respectful of other people and that is not offensive and is well informed. So it doesn't matter what your level of education is, you have the right to hold these opinions and you have the right to discuss them. What you also have the right to do in the public school setting is you have the right to wear clothing that is supportive of your political ideology. So if you have a shirt on that says Free Palestine, you cannot be sent home for that, just because it might be offensive to some people or it might be sort of controversial according to the teachers, or because maybe your teachers and your administrators don't like that message. That does not mean they can send you home or make you not wear it. If you wear the kafaya, like Imam Dawud had on a little while ago, when he was on, you can wear that. They cannot force you to take it off. They cannot force you to go home if you don't take it off. They cannot suspend you for wearing it. A piece of clothing is not disruptive just simply because it has a political message on it. There are certain boundaries that are set by the courts to determine what is considered to quote unquote disruptive speech in schools, and wearing a political message like Free Palestine or wearing the kafaya is never going to meet those standards. You also have the right to pass out informational handouts, flyers, in your school, so long as you're not doing it during class hours. So you can't walk into a classroom where a teacher is teaching and pass out flyers or pass out information, but you can do it in the hallways. You can do it before and after school, so long as your school allows people to pass out flyers. They don't have a complete ban on any type of flyer. You are allowed to pass out flyers and have those information. You are allowed to participate in protests without feeling that you are going to be disciplined for participating in those protests, whether they happen on your college campus or your school campus or off campus. I know we've had some people calling us, some college students especially, who are afraid of repercussions for participating in pro-Palestinian rallies, but you cannot be disciplined by your school for that. There's a prohibition on what's called viewpoint discrimination, meaning your school can't choose a side and then decide that the other side has to be silenced. And this is a very well respected precedent. The Supreme Court of the United States, who is the highest court in the land, who interprets and applies the laws across the country, has determined that schools have an obligation to respect the rights of students to express their opinion inside and outside of school, including when those opinions are dissenting or unpopular. And it can only be punished when it is threatening. So those are the basic, that's the basic framework for what we're looking at. So let me give you for instance, if you have a teacher, maybe who's a history teacher, who's trying to talk about the conflict or the war against the Palestinians in their current situation, and you express a viewpoint, and your teacher says, you can't say that, that's offensive, that's disruptive, and you get disciplined. Or say the teacher says something that you find offensive, you have the right to complain about that. So when we give this presentation at the masjids or we give this presentation at schools, I like to tell people, you have the right not only to be free to say what you want, but you also have the right to be free from having to stand up and take a side or be called out. So if a teacher is calling out people to justify something, or to express their opinion or to take a stand one side or the other, you cannot be compelled to speak about that. And Michigan has an absolute right in our Constitution for all K through 12 students to have a free and safe education. So teachers who are espousing views that are harmful, that are inaccurate, and that are one-sided are inherently harmful to students, to especially Muslim students at this current time. And you have the right to be free from that. And when something like that happens, that means you have the right to address your grievances with the school, because it's the other prong of the First Amendment, your right to address your grievances, which means if a teacher has said something that's inaccurate or has called you out in a way that is harmful to you, you have the right to go to the administration. And then if the administration doesn't take it seriously, you have the right to go higher to the school board or to the Department of Education until you get the redress that is necessary to allow you to have a good, healthy, safe learning environment, which you're entitled to in the state of Michigan. So I think with that, those are the framework that we're working with when it comes to the First Amendment rights within the public school system. So as I stated, this is primarily as it pertains to schools. I want to touch on one other issue because this has come up throughout the CAIR network, where there are political protesters or people who are advocating on social media for Palestine who are being targeted or questioned by the FBI or other law enforcement. And what I have to say to that is, you cannot be questioned. It is not a crime to espouse your political views. Your right to free speech is without limit, so long as you are not making threats to other people. That's including if it's controversial, offensive, or even profane. All of those things are protected so long as you're not making threats. There is one exception to that, and that is when you talk about terrorism. If you're people are afraid that they're going to be called terrorists, or that we've had some complaints in Michigan that social media posts are leading people to, threats of being reported as terrorists. If you are advocating specifically for the Palestinian people, you have nothing to fear. That would not be considered a terrorist act, and people will be making false claims. Unfortunately, there's not much we can do about a false claim, but for the most part, you will not receive any repercussions from that. You won't even, most law enforcement agencies are not even going to look into that if your post is about, free Palestine or sharing videos of the suffering in Palestine. There's nothing objectionable or questionable about that. So we don't have to be afraid that people that we don't know are making empty threats to us on social media. We should not allow that to silence us. And you have the right to continue to make those. I also know that they're shutting some people's Facebook pages down or Instagram pages down who are sharing too many videos or support for Palestine. There's a legal organization that's working on that. And if you contact CAIR Michigan because you've had an issue with your social media, we can put you in contact to get your social media up and running, because we are not going to allow a public platform to shut down and to silence our voices. So I think those are really the things I wanted to talk to you about today with regards to what our rights are in the school and on social media. I think that there might be questions, and I'm going to bring Brother Dawud back on, and so we can maybe go through some questions.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, there's one question already, and those who are watching, please pose any questions you have, and I'll put this on the screen briefly. But one other thing just to remind everyone of, and this is a reality. So there is the letter of the law, and then how the law is applied. So we have to always remember this. So for instance, sharing certain things about Palestine, let's say on social media, as Sister Amy mentioned, yes, you have the legal right to do that. However, we do know of cases in the past where people were posting things specifically about Palestine and then were visited by the FBI. So if the FBI comes to your home, and we see this all the time, just know and understand that you do not have to let them in your home, and not unless they have a particular search warrant that is with your address, your name and your address, and it's signed by a judge, right? If they want to come and talk with you, you don't allow them in your home and say ahlan wa sahlan, qahwa or shai. Like you don't have to. You take their business card and you can tell them very respectfully, I'll get back with you through our attorney, and then you can call CAIR Michigan's office and give us the information, and then we can follow up with the FBI agent for you. But the point of it is, you are under no obligation to talk to the FBI if they come asking you about your political views or your religious views, for that matter. So I just want to let you know that, because I've already heard, not in this state of Michigan, but I've heard of in another state where the FBI went to people in their congregation, people who are majority Arab, and we're questioning people about their views, right? So you don't have to speak with them. And as I say all the time, that if the FBI is coming to talk with you, they're not coming to you because they are your friend. The I is in FBI for a reason. It's investigations, which means that they're coming fishing to investigate, to either open up potentially a case against you or someone that you know who could be innocent of any wrongdoing, right? And we know of this happening in our area, including of one young man who's our client who got uh, I think the word's catfish, right, Sister Amy?
Yeah, catfish is probably.
When he was on Facebook and got some young sister was chatting him up on Facebook, and come to find out she was an FBI informant. He was interested in marrying this sister, and she was talking a certain way and trying to set him up to for indictment, right? So this is real. So let me get to this question. I'll put this one up on the screen. Uh, can my job discipline me based on my stance if they have released a statement that I do not agree with?
So that's a very good question. It depends on who your job is. If your job is the government, then no, they can't. But if you work for a private employer, it's more than likely that they can discipline you up to termination if you are posting things that they find offensive or violate their social media policy, should they have one. However, if your job has made a statement that you don't agree with and it's one-sided in support of Israel and doesn't mention the plight of the Palestinians over the last 75 years, I urge you to contact our office and do an intake. We have a form letter that we can use to respond to them. We actually have two letters. One, if you'd like to do it and on your own and respond, we can provide you with the resources to do that. Or the second one is if you'd like us to respond on your behalf, even anonymously, so that you don't face the fear of repercussions from your employer for standing up for against a statement that they've put out. So if that has happened, contact our office. But the short answer is yes, you can be disciplined or up to termination if you've taken a stance, if you said something. We just saw this happen, I think in New Jersey, one of the law, or New York, one of the law schools, the Student Bar Association president was offered a job at a big firm. She posted something on social media and the job offer was rescinded. It's very unlikely that she'll have any recourse for that because they are private employers. And while they can't discriminate against you because of the fact that you're Muslim, they can say, you know what, we don't hire people who hold those political views, because political views are not protected status. Your actions are not protected, but your identity is under the Civil Rights Act. So that's what I like to remind people.
Another question, but to add on something too, is that if you're at a workplace and let's say you work, let's just say for the University of Michigan, for instance, Ann Arbor. You've just use them as an example. You are faculty at the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor, and the president puts out a hideous statement that you disagree with, and then he doubles down where it's one-sided, which this actually happened, right? Horrible. And then like the head of your department then also puts out an email, puts out a statement that is one-sided and or is showing bigotry towards Palestinians and or Muslims as a whole. We suggest that you just don't complain to your friends in your private WhatsApp group, or just be nonchalant or casual about like that's how the way things are. At the least, you should contact our office and let us know, right? At the least, because we keep statistics on this. And one thing is for sure is that the party on the other side of this equation, their community complains about everything, and they have like statistics and all these different demographics. Why? Because their community calls and complains, and they annotate every single thing, including a number of things that aren't even valid, right? So number one, do that. But number two, we are here to service you, right? This is part of our job. CAIR Michigan acts as your advocate. We're a shield in a sense for the community, or Junna, right? So if you don't want to speak up on behalf of a statement, we can contact the institution, right? Or we can contact the place of employment, either by mentioning your name, or we don't have to even mention your name. We can talk about the statement in general and how it could be causing potentially a hostile work environment for the Muslim employees, right? So that's what I say, right? But don't don't just be silent and just take Islamophobia or anti-Arab racism, right? Or anti-Palestinian bigotry. Just don't sit back and take it. If it's coming from your workplace, report it. Okay, this is a very long question right here. The person's name is here, so I'm not going to put it up on the screen. I only put up the other one because there's no name. For confidentiality purposes, I guess. But it says, what should we do when we see comments under articles or posts saying something like time for a house cleaning party in Dearborn? There was one comment under a Free Press article on the Lions player whose parents returned from Israel. I saw it and asked the person what they meant by it. Some people liked it and a couple of others made comments agreeing. I said that I screenshot everything and have it on record. And the person responded and claimed he has no record. And then it has like an ellipsis. That's a social media comment, Sister Amy.
So if you see something on social media, that you think appears to be a threat, right? We all know what they mean when they say that it's time for a house cleaning party in Dearborn. We also all know about the fact that there was somebody who was just arrested in Farmington Hills for making a credible threat on Palestinians in Dearborn. So we have to take threats very seriously. The best thing to do when you see those types of comments where it appears that people are making what could be either, just bodacious, threatening statements or really, really threatening statements is to screenshot it just like you did and then turn them over to law enforcement. That's the best thing. And you let law enforcement handle it, because even if the person is using a fake name or a pseudonym or like a nickname, generally there are tags that are found on social media where police can determine exactly where that comment's coming from and exactly who made that comment. So the best thing in that instance is to not engage with that person, because clearly they're saying something that's inherently violent. And, just turn it over and let law enforcement deal with it at that point.
Yes. And so your sister Amy was making reference to actually in Dearborn, where there was a guy online, 41-year-old man from Farmington Hills. He actually was just charged today. He threatened online, to take out Palestinians in Dearborn, and he got charged for that. Right. So, and we were advocating for him to be charged under the hate crime law, or ethnic intimidation law. So, as Sister Amy said, report it to your police department. However, because the Dearborn Police Department was the party that actually arrested this guy, though he's a Farmington Hills resident. And saying that if you're a little skittish or you're a little nervous about contacting law enforcement, then you can contact us and send us the information, and we can let law enforcement know. Also, in regards to what Sister Amy said about you contacting law enforcement, even if you do contact law enforcement on your own, still follow up and contact us and share the information for two reasons. Number one, for our database that we can track these probable or alleged hate crimes or these threats. But number two, if the police department does not get back with you in regards to the status of the investigation, if they're investigating at all, we can contact law enforcement with the actual number that you have, because every time you file a complaint, there's a number that's attached, and many times it will even have the investigating officer's name. we can call up and follow up in regards to the status if they've opened up an investigation or not in regards to the social media posts. But the big thing here I keep stressing is we just can't sit back and be silent about these things. And there are people who make comments on social media, and many of them are idle. And then you have people who make threats on social media or say things, and then they go and do things like the white supremacist guy that shot up the supermarket in Buffalo. Like he had made comments online before he went into that mass shooting, right? So we should keep that in mind. Are there any other questions that we have online from the audience? If not, we'll make some concluding comments. Okay, so if there's no other comments, oh, here we go. No, we have another comment. Excuse me. Okay. I am the only Arab Muslim at the company I work at, and because of my hijab, I always get questions from my coworkers about events. Can my job use my words against me?
So your speech is not protected against your employer. Your speech, the First Amendment and your protections of your right to freedom of speech are only enforceable against the government, state, federal, local governments. So yes, they can. But the second thing is if you are the only Arab Muslim and the only hijabi at your place of employment, you should not be asked to be the spokesperson for what's going on in the Muslim world, the Arab world, in Palestine, for your religion, for anything that makes you who you are. You are not the spokesperson for that. So the fact that people are asking you these questions, if they make you uncomfortable or you're afraid of them, you're not under any obligation to answer them, and you should not allow any of your coworkers to make you feel like the spokesperson or to make you feel uncomfortable at work, because you have a right to be free from those intrusive questions at work and from being forced to take a stance or be forced to, worry about if you say the wrong thing, you could lose your job. That's the the typical, the pinnacle, like the idea of having a hostile working environment is when your coworkers put you in a position that makes it untenable for you to be comfortable at work. So you shouldn't have to face that, and you should ask them to stop. And if they don't stop, then you should report that to HR.
Well, thank you for answering that, Sister Amy. Are there any other questions from the viewing audience? We still have some time. In the meanwhile, we encourage you to take this video and to share it in your WhatsApp groups. It's for those of you watching on Facebook, it's also on YouTube. So please share this video in your WhatsApp groups or with your other friends. And they don't have to be Muslim, right? Because we also know there are people who are allies who are not Muslims or not Arabs, who've made comments about what's going on in Gaza and have been bullied, have been intimidated, and silenced, right? So this isn't just for Muslims only, this information that Sister Amy gave. So please share the information. No other questions. So my final comments are, that we as American citizens, or even if you're not a citizen, if you're a resident, you have the right to petition those who are supposed to represent us, who are what are called duly elected officials, right? So the congresswoman or congressman in your district, you should call them and voice your concerns about what's going on and ask them to demand to the Biden administration that, number one, that the Israelis stop the bombing of civilians in Gaza. Number two, to allow the basic necessities of life, which are food and water, to be able to enter into Gaza, as well as medicine. There are people who are dying because they can't get insulin. Like, we don't even think of it. That's not just bombs. People are dying because they can't get their insulin and other things. And then three, that American citizens should be able to be allowed to cross through the Rafah border crossing out of Gaza into Egypt so that they can get out. These are American citizens and people who are like fellow Michiganians, right? So those calls should be made to the congressperson in your district. Call the office. You can email too, but call. We should be flooding their offices with calls. Number two, the senator's office and Senator Gary Peters, right? Call his office. Also, call the White House, right? All these calls aren't going to take long, right? What's taking 5 minutes out of our day to make a couple of calls, right? And to make a comment or to send an email, right? Besides our prayers, this is like not very exhaustive action. But if enough of us do this, then perhaps there's some sort of tipping point where people like Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, who has a direct line to Mr. Biden, will say, look, my constituents here in Michigan, they're actual Michigan residents, Michigan citizens of America who are Michiganian, who are stuck there. We need to get our people out. And literally, our office at CAIR Michigan is working with other advocacy groups on legal action to try to get American citizens, Michigan residents out of Gaza who are stuck there, that our government is leaving them to be stuck there. And it reminds me of how Hurricane Katrina victims were left during Bush, right? Or in 2006, when there were American citizens who were stranded in Lebanon, when Israel was carpet bombing Lebanon, like a similar thing, right? Like Biden is like acting like Bush, right? So make these calls to Congresswoman Dingell and Senator Gary Peters. Call the White House. Please do that and send emails. Oh, we have another question that came in, Sister Amy, while I was talking about contacting the officials. Okay. Assalamu alaikum. I work for a municipality, and we have standing rules to not discuss religion and politics. I'm asked often regarding the latest events. Can I be held accountable? Jazakallahu khairan.
So the reason the municipality has rules about not discussing religion and politics generally is because when you work for the government, even a municipality, you have a lesser right of freedom of speech because you work for a municipality. So sometimes your views can be misconstrued as the views of the municipality, and also because they don't want to be liable if you take some action in your job and you've made a comment at the job that might make it look like you took an action for an impermissible purpose. So that's one of the reasons why there's a regulation. Just like so if they're singling you out, so if you're having a conversation and somebody's asking you about these political events and people are discussing it and you're the only one that's disciplined, then yes, you can, then that's impermissible. That is they can't discipline you if it's a conversation that's being held by a lot of people. You have to be they would have to discipline everybody that participates in that conversation if there's a rule against having those conversations. So unless they're disciplining everybody that's participating in that, then you can't be disciplined. And Sixth Circuit Court, which is where we sit, is very clear on this issue, that government employees still have the right to express, especially religious views, at work to some extent, and political views to a lesser extent, but you do have those rights. But if there is a workplace policy against it and you're violating the policy, then you can be disciplined, so long as they're disciplining everybody that's participating in that policy or in the violation of that policy equally.
Thank you very much, Sister Amy. Is there any further comments?
I think the only thing I really want people to take home from this is that, even in times of stress or distress, or where there is such a polarizing view on what's taking place, and even when you're in a position of being in a public school setting or a workplace setting, your private life is your private life, and we don't lose our ability to stand for what's right and speak our mind and talk about our political, religious, and moral beliefs just because other people might not like it or might not agree with it at the time. And that if you are facing some form of backlash because you took a principled stance on something that is unpopular with other people, I implore you to call our office and utilize our resources to help you navigate that situation, inshallah.
Inshallah, inshallah. If there are no more questions, we'll give it a minute. If there are no more questions, then we will conclude. We'd also like to thank our friends at JVP, at Jewish Voice for Peace, for their advocacy and their work on this issue from the Jewish American Community organization that we've worked with in the past. And I believe on Wednesday, they are working with some Jewish Americans as far as having a rally in Washington, D.C. So I believe that information is online on their website. But for those of you all who are free on Wednesday, that might be something for you to do. But one thing is for sure, we have to let our voices be heard. And not to sound like a cliche, but I will close with this because I've said this for many years. And any of you who followed CAIR Michigan's work over the years, you've heard me say that, like, freedom is not free. Like, there's a price to pay. So sometimes we have to be a little uncomfortable. Sometimes we have to do a little sacrifice. Sometimes we have to spend a little money and do some travel, right, to raise our voices for our issues. And, thank God, the likes of my grandfather, he just turned 97 less than 2 weeks ago. And, he used to donate and used to go see Dr. King. And, my family lived in the Jim Crow South. My mother went to segregated schools. She was in the first class in York County, Virginia, that was in the 60s, where schools got desegregated. And you can only imagine what she went through, right? So they paid money and protested and risked their life so that I could go to schools as an African American that were desegregated. But those people, they said, my grandparents, my parents in those generations, they sacrificed so that I could have a little bit more rights today as an African American, right? And we benefit as Muslims, even if you're not Black, you benefit from that struggle, even just from the 1964 Civil Rights Act. There are people who suffered, right? We're not facing a quarter of those challenges today, dear Muslims, that they were facing back 60 years ago, right, in the United States of America, right? So just to put into some perspective, donate to organizations like CAIR Michigan who are working to defend our rights. Yeah, I mean, that's good, but you might need to spend a little money and travel and raise your voices. Maybe go fly to Washington, D.C. and knock on some doors sometimes, like when we have Advocacy Day, and spend some money out of your pocket. And, this is what we need to do as a community, as Muslims specifically, but Americans in general, if we want to preserve the rights that we have within this system. So those are my closing comments. And we ask Almighty Allah, who is the Lord of the heavens and the earth and all is in between, to protect our community here in Michigan, to protect the Muslims here in America, We ask Almighty Allah to shower His patience upon our brothers and sisters in Illinois, and to have mercy on the soul of the 6-year-old boy who was stabbed to death, whose funeral was today, and to grant comfort to his mother. We ask Almighty God to grant relief to the people of Palestine and protect them from war crimes and from illegal occupation. We ask Almighty God, Allah, to protect the people of southern Lebanon and to free their land from illegal occupation, and protect the people of Syria and to free their land of illegal occupation. We ask Almighty God to have us see truth as truth and to follow it, and to see falsehood as falsehood and to stay far away from it. And we ask Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have us manifest the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Aflu jihad kalimatul haqin sultan jair, that our beloved Prophet, peace be upon him, said that the most virtuous struggle, the most virtuous jihad, is to speak a word of truth and justice to an unjust governmental authority, to an unjust leader. We ask Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have us live and die upon this way, upon this virtuous way of standing for our rights, of being peaceful and being law-abiding citizens, while not fearing the fear of those who would blame us, who would castigate us, marginalize us, and malign us. سبحان ربك بعزة ما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم. الفاتحة. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.